just now. Okay, right guys, I think we're good to go. Throughout this presentation, I'll be utilising Microsoft PowerPoint, so it'll just be a quick 10, 11 slides with regards to my personal opinions on careers and employability in sport. So I'll talk you through some of the education that I have, some of the relevant training that I undertook to pursue a career in this industry. And alongside that, I'll touch on some of my work experience, some of the roles that I've had, and some of the locations that I've worked. You'll notice that there's a vast majority of things that I've managed to do in my short career so far. And really that's just to keep my options open. Because similar to a lot of yourselves, guys, you might not be aware of what you want to do. You're not sure of your career path yet. So this is just an understanding and to increase your awareness of the possibility of a career in sport. So let's move on. Okay, so the objectives of this session today. Like I said, I'll give you an understanding of the industry, so what it's like to work in sport or an events environment. So whether it is sport that you're specifically interested in working in, or you're maybe interested in events, it's transferable skills. So it's communication, confidence, teamwork, working under pressure. So all of these things are relevant to you, whether you do actually want to pursue a career in sport or events. It's all relevant and transferable skills. So even if you did volunteer at an event one day, you can pick up skills that are transferable into another workplace. So it's definitely relevant. Then we'll touch on some of the management and employability skills that I personally find relevant to working in sport and events. And again, these are transferable skills. So I've already touched on already. Confidence, communication, delivering training, working in uncomfortable situations. These are all things that are required in any work, not necessarily sport and not necessarily events. Then I'll touch on some of the training that I've done, which has enhanced my career, because it's important never to stand still, because it's incredibly competitive when you're applying for jobs. I'm sure you're already aware of that. If you're applying to college, university, a modern apprenticeship, whatever it may be, it's important never to stand still, because people around you aren't going to stand still. It's a competitive environment, so you need to try and do your best to upskill yourself, whether that's volunteering, doing a work placement for free, maybe for a period of time, maybe just reaching out to someone and gaining some of those transferable skills, because it's all relevant. You might need to start here, but eventually you can work your way up. Just do a little thing at a time and you can work up. But I'll touch on that throughout. And then lastly, I'll discuss some of the challenges, or maybe it's better to say things to consider. So it's not always easy. It's not always in the same place. It's not always stress-free. And you might not always be working behind a desk. You might not be always outside. You might need to be flexible. So I'll touch on some of these challenges throughout. So just before we start, guys, would you be okay to use the chat function to list as many jobs as you can in the sport industry? So if you can just list some of the jobs that you're aware of in sport, and I can read them out and see how many we can come up with. If we can try and get a minimum of 10. So we've got a teacher, yeah, so we've got PE teacher potentially, or a coach. We've got football, yeah, whether that's actually a professional sports person or athlete yourself, or football manager, football coach, personal trainer, yep, team manager. I think we've got 5 so far. Keep it coming. Olympics, yeah, perfect. So I'll touch on that throughout this presentation. A lot of my experiences with regards to event organisation, Academy, yeah, perfect. So if golf is your industry, I'll touch on that as well. I worked at Gleneagles at the European Championships. I've got some good knowledge on that as well. If we can get a few more down, yeah, perfect. So physiotherapist, that's one that a lot of people think that's one of the only jobs in sport, same as PE teaching. But actually, There's perfect, yeah. Stunt double. That is exactly. I get a great answer again. An umpire, yeah. So we can talk about coaches, officials. You can work as a volunteer manager as well. You can work as a stage manager, so you can manage the ceremony. I'm not sure if you ever watched the Olympics. Yeah, you can be a ball boy and a ball girl, both in a paid and a voluntary capacity. Team captain, again, exactly. Whether that's in a performance capacity, whether you're actually playing as an athlete, or if you're a team captain and you manage a team of volunteers, you manage a team of paid staff. So yeah, that's a great answer. So that pretty much covers that. It was just to make you aware that there are a variety of opportunities in sport. It's not limited to a PE teacher or a physiotherapist. There's multiple things. And like I said, I'll go on to talk about some of the things I've done, and hopefully you'll pick up that there are multiple roles in sport. I was touching briefly on, if you've watched the Olympics, or if you've ever watched the Super Bowl, or if you've ever watched Anthony Joshua in a boxing match or anything like that, before the fight is sometimes, or before the match is sometimes better than the match itself. So there's people that coordinate that, and they're called ceremonies managers. So I've done that before as well, and I'll touch on that throughout this presentation. So at the Super Bowl at halftime, there's a massive show. You can have like Beyonce and Bruno Mars performing, and that's in a 15-minute slot, and that requires hundreds of paid and voluntary staff to make that event run. And there is absolutely no reason why it can't be you. You know, it needs to be someone, so there is no reason why it can't be you. And the way to get into these roles is, like I said, start small. And work your way up, whether it's volunteering at first, and then if you get another interview, you can say, oh, well, actually, I've worked at this before, and then it can go on from there. So yeah, it's relevant and it's transferable skills. And one last thing to utilize this chat function for before we proceed into the next couple of slides is especially relevant within sport and events, guys. There's a difference between a career and employment. Does anyone know what the difference is, or can you hazard a guess between what a career is and what employment is? So I'll give you like 30 seconds to try and work that one out, because it's very relevant to sport. So the difference between a career, maybe what connotations does a career have, with regards to, or on the opposite side, employment. What type of connotations does employment have? Any ideas? All right, cool. Well, if you're struggling with that one, guys, so it's particularly relevant within sport and especially events, because the nature of sport events is exactly, a career is generally what you've done over your whole life. That's perfect, yeah. And with regards to careers in sport and events, just the nature of them, that they are temporary things. So if you're wanting to work at a sporting event, it is a temporary thing. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the answers are coming in now. That's absolutely perfect. So employment, yeah, and the opposite of that is in the present moment. So you might have lots of periods of employment, and then on the opposite side of that, you could have a career which is stable, secure income, which is regularly Monday to Friday, every day. You've got your holidays, you're secured, you're sorted. That's a career, and that's over the course of your life. So a career in sport could be things like PE teaching, a physiotherapist, a secure and permanent role. Or alternatively, you can have lots of periods of employment, which is more temporary contracts, and with that, there's an element of risk. I would say I have a career as an events manager, but with that, it interlinks, because I've also got temporary periods of employment. So it's just to make you aware that, first of all, if you're looking to gain a career in the industry, you might have to take temporary periods of employment first before you can establish yourself and start to build a career. So we'll move on now to some of my background and where I've developed some of the skills which I've then taken on to my career. So me personally, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I left school. I was 18 years old and I had no idea what I wanted to do. But I knew that personally I loved sport. So I applied to a few courses, I applied to a few jobs. And then just for me, I managed to get into university. And to be totally honest, I got rejected from some jobs, but that's fine. So I thought, you know what, I'll give university a shot. And what that meant is that I appreciate that further education might not be for everyone. I know so many people that are highly successful and they didn't decide to go to college or university, but what they did do is put themselves out there. They volunteered somewhere, they maybe got a modern apprenticeship, they started maybe in an industry that they weren't completely passionate about, but it gave them those transferable skills and it meant that they could progress and push on into another career and something that they maybe love or they do have that passion for. So for me, like I say, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I managed to get into university. And if I didn't get into university, I would have went to college as well. Or alternatively, if I didn't do that, I would have applied to anything and got a job as well. Because like I say, it's these transferable skills that are important, and you need to start somewhere. So I got into university, and that was 4 years at Glasgow Caledonian University, studying sport. And just as I graduated, luckily enough, the Commonwealth Games came around, and that was in 2014. I'm not sure if any of yourselves went to watch any of the athletics or the boxing or whatever it may be, but they were looking for people to work there. And I thought, I have literally no experience. All I've got to my name is a degree. I don't really have much on offer, but I'm just going to apply anyway. So I applied to one of the roles at the Commonwealth Games, and after 3 interviews, I was successful, and I ended up getting the job as the boxing assistant manager. And I know nothing about boxing. Well, I do now, but at the time I knew nothing about boxing. I'd never worked at a major sporting event. I quickly went on to like YouTube to research some of the rules, and it just shows that I was willing to put myself out there, and that's what I'm trying to get across here. You might have some great education, you might have some great experience, but it's no use if you're not willing to put yourself out there and give it a shot. And then after that finished, I thought, you know what, actually, I wasn't the most clever in school. I didn't really do that well, and I wasn't that passionate about school. But when I went to university, that's where my passion started to come out, and I started to, because I knew I enjoyed what I was doing, it was a lot easier. So again, guys, see if you're not sure what you want to do. You could even just apply to a college or a university, or apply for a job in an industry that maybe you know that you'll enjoy. And I knew that I would enjoy sport. So that's where over those periods of 3 or 4 years, I started to enhance my career. I started to get more confident because I felt like when I was writing my essays, I was actually taking information in. Whereas when I was at school, there was a lot of subjects I wasn't that sure about, and I felt like I wasn't taking a lot of information in. But when I went to university and knew that it was something I was passionate about, it was a lot easier for me. And I ended up after that being offered the chance to do a master's degree. And because I wasn't so great in first and second year at uni, but I showed progression throughout. So I went from maybe like 40% grades in like first and second year all the way up to 70%. And one of my modules was 85%, which in university is a great score. And that's not because I was that academically talented, but it's because I was passionate about it and I put all my effort in. And then I got into the master's degree and I passed, and that's something that I would potentially have never done or thought I could have done in school, but it's because I chose to pursue it and put my all into it. I was able to achieve that. And that meant that when I was then applying to jobs in future, I could say that I had relevant qualifications so that I was informed in that area of study. So again, I appreciate that further education might not be for everyone, but if you're not sure what you want to do, it's a great avenue to go down, whether it's first route as an NQ in college and work your way up, or whatever it may be, or you could maybe apply to a modern apprenticeship and get qualifications throughout. And then the thing just underneath that is a Prince 2. So again, that's further training that I've done because it's relevant to event management, but that's something we can talk about a wee bit later. So now you'll notice there's quite a lot of events on the screen there, but I'll go through them kind of one by one, and I'll talk you through how that opportunity came about. So you can see on the right hand side there's some photos. That first picture there on the screen is me ringside at the boxing. So that was at the Commonwealth Games boxing, and like I say, I knew nothing about boxing. I'd never been to a boxing match or anything like that. And yet there I was ringside managing the boxing operation. And it's just because I was willing to put myself out there. And the reason I got that job is because throughout university, first of all, I showed that I was informed in that area of study, so I could answer some of their questions in that sense, that, oh, I know a wee bit about sport, I know a wee bit about events, so I was able to talk about that. I gave examples of times where I was in a team environment, I was delivering presentations, so what that meant I could do is I can train volunteers. I can speak to people, so I can train volunteers. Easy as that. You can take on information and relay it to someone else. There you go, volunteer manager, job done. So it is as easy if you have developed confidence in things throughout either your work or university. It's definitely easy. So that's how I managed to get through the interview. And throughout the 5 years in further education, I was volunteering regularly. So I'm a runner myself, so I participate in lots of running events, but I also volunteered at lots of running events, so that when I then got an interview, I could say I understand an event from a participant's perspective because I actually took part myself, and I also understand it from a volunteer's perspective because I was a volunteer. And then that meant that, and I would love the opportunity to understand it from an event manager's perspective, and that's what then got me the job. So it's just about tying all these things together, trying to think who actually is involved in this event or this job or whatever it may be. If you can try and pick off some of these skills so that you can then answer it quite comfortably, whether it's in an interview in person or in Teams or whatever it may be. So you'll notice there's loads of events there. So the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow I've touched on. I worked at the boxing there. Then I was invited to the Manchester UK School Games, and that was athletics. And the reason I got that job is because I built a good relationship at the Commonwealth Games. So I proved that I was reliable, I was hardworking. I might not be the most knowledgeable or informed in that area of study, but again, someone needs to get the job, so why can't it be us? Like we should be putting ourselves forward. So that's what I did. Immediately after the Commonwealth Games, I sent them a message just saying that, look, guys, I absolutely love that. If there's anything else, please let me know. And they did. So a couple of months went by and I got offered the chance to go to the athletics, this time as the operations manager. Then, and again, I'd never done that before, but I was willing to put myself out there and give it a shot. Then I got the chance to go to Azerbaijan, and I had obviously never been there before. They speak Azeri in Azerbaijan, not English, so I wasn't comfortable. I was in an area out with my comfort zone. There was cultural differences, there was language differences, it was a huge eye-opener for me, but it was also a great opportunity, and it was something to prove that I was adaptable, flexible, willing to work outside my comfort zone, and willing to travel as well, because that's something we might need to do if we're interested in a career in sport. We might need to travel to work. I've travelled for every job I've had, whether it's 5, 10, 15. Currently I'm driving 30 miles to get to work, so it just shows you need to travel and need to be flexible. You might not always be able to work from home with regards to employment, especially within sports and events. After that, I went to work at the cricket finals down in Birmingham, then gymnastics World Championships in Glasgow, and then I got offered the chance to work at the cycling World Championships in London back in 2016. And is there anything you can notice about what I'm saying at all these events? Is there anything different about them? You can feel free to use the chat function just now, guys. Is there anything different about these events that I've brought up? So first of all, I worked at the boxing event. Then I was at the athletics event down in Manchester. Then I went to the cricket event in Birmingham. Then gymnastics in Glasgow, cycling. Anything different about them that you can notice? Must be something. Nice, yeah, exactly. So Joseph, yeah, exactly, spot on. The sports are all different. So what is that telling you? It shows that I'm not so narrow in my focus. I'm not only focusing on one thing. There are multiple sports out there. So why would I just limit myself to one sport? I love running, of course I do. I'm a runner. I love athletics, but that doesn't mean that I'm only going to work in athletics. Don't narrow your focus too small that it means that it's incredibly difficult to get a job. Open all these possibilities. Like I would have never had the chance to work at all of these events if I only wanted to work in athletics. So it just shows you there's multiple things out there, and that's relevant to not only sport but events. If you're interested in a career in events, don't just do sport events. you can work at art, music, cultural events, lots of different things. There's wedding event planners. There's so many different things you can do in this career, whether it's regards to sport or events. So I'll keep going through this, and I'll nip on to the next slide shortly. So then I worked at the Great North Run and City Games. So a lot of the events that I'd worked at previously were the delivery phase. So I would go in for the delivery of the event, which is like a short-term contract. I would deliver the event and then I would go home, job done. Whereas I got the chance to work with a company called the Great Run Company. And I worked there for almost a year, and I was involved in the planning phase. So the planning phase for sports and events is a lot different to the delivery phase, because when you go into the delivery, it's all fun. There's fireworks, there's crowds, there's music, everyone's going wild, it's brilliant. But then the planning stage is the complete opposite. So you're sitting at your desk, writing up risks, rewards, policies, procedures, all these different types of things. But you can learn as you go. And the best thing about the planning phase is that it shows that you're working towards a goal, rather than going just straight in at delivery phase, delivering the event and going. The planning phase shows that you've got organisation skills, you've got the ability to work as a team and work towards a goal. So then when my next interview comes up, I can give examples of when I've worked towards goals and I've delivered an event. So then I got the chance to work at the European Championships in Glasgow, and that job there was a multiple sport manager for all volunteers. So I was one of the volunteer managers working across triathlon, athletics, cycling, golf, BMX, swimming, open water swimming. There was loads of different events, loads of different sports, 4,000 volunteers. And the reason I got that job is because in my interview, I was able to say, oh, well, actually, I've actually already worked at cycling, gymnastics. But so it just shows that if you're willing to put yourself out there, first of all, better opportunities can come, because you can keep working your way up, give relevant examples in your interviews, and go from there. And it's all transferable skills. And then I've worked at the Special Olympics in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Again, that was a cultural difference and an event I was willing to go outside my comfort zone for. I worked in athletics, and this time I was just volunteering at the Athletics Championships, and that's such a relevant, important piece of information. If you can volunteer, it also shows that you're hardworking. It shows that you're willing to stay in the industry. You're willing to meet new people, make friends, and you never know. I met friends at that Glasgow 2019 European Athletics Championships that I still speak to every day, and they have helped me in my life. So it just shows you that because it might be relevant to your employment, it might be someone with a similar interest. It might be someone who maybe you could be working alongside one day. So it's great to network and meet people, whether that's volunteering or in a paid role. And then most recently, I've worked at the European Football Championships in Glasgow, and I've recently been back from Tough Mudder. So this slide really, guys, is just to give you an example of the different roles that I have had. So I've said already, we need to be adaptable and we need to be flexible, especially if we want to pursue a career in sport. I've worked all my way up from a volunteer to an administrator to assistant manager, team leader, and then all the way up to a manager as well. So it just shows that you need to be willing to work hard, first of all, to get your opportunity, and then see once you've got that opportunity, you can go anywhere from there. But you just need to be willing to work hard in the first place to get your foot in the door. And once you're in there, you're sorted, because you know the right people. Then you've learned some new skills, you've got new information, new knowledge that you can transfer into any areas of employment. Some of the jobs that I took at first, I had to someone would tell me, Craig, I need you to write down a paragraph on boxing. And I would ask them, right, what do you want me to write? And then they say, talk about the length of the boxing match, the break in between each round. And I was, okay, done, wrote it up. I wasn't too knowledgeable, but did my best. Perfect. That's all they needed. Then the next task came. I was learning new information as well as I went. Some of the jobs I've had, I had to literally run and collect the lunches, collect the coffees, bring them back. I did that for like a year of building up experience. And then next thing you know, I'm working at these events. I'm getting offered assistant manager roles. Then I'm getting offered management. So it just shows you might need to be willing to put yourself out there and graft for a few years just to get up that experience and that confidence, and then it can go from there. I've done things like I've been a transport manager for the Edinburgh Marathon. I don't know anything really about that, but I put myself out there again, and gave it a shot. And they offered me some work experience first. So I volunteered and shadowed someone at the year before. And then the next year I was offered the transport manager job. So it just shows you need to be flexible, put yourself out there and work it with your comfort zone, and sometimes take on roles that you might not be too keen on, but you know that it'll help you later down the line. So we'll move on to the next slide now. And again, this is just to reiterate some of the various locations that I have worked at. So within Scotland, I've obviously worked in Glasgow because that's where I'm from. I'm not sure if you can tell from my accent, but I'm from Glasgow and I work in Glasgow regularly, whether that's in sport or events. I'm currently working in Stirling as an active skills coordinator. So that's relevant to sport as well, because in my interview for that, they said, well, for this role, you need to know about all of the different sports so that you can take that into the schools. And I was able to answer that no problem, because I put myself out there and I was able to work at different sports. So it's all transferable. That's a perfect example of how it's a transferable skill. And the fact that I've not narrowed my focus so much into one sport, it's opened up so many other opportunities for me. You can see I've worked in Edinburgh, Ayr, Alloa, that's all in Scotland. And then I've also, for temporary periods of employment, I've worked in Newcastle, Cheltenham, Aintree, Newmarket, London, Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds. So I've worked all across the UK, in both, Scotland and England. And then internationally, I've worked in Azerbaijan and Abu Dhabi, which is what I touched on earlier. So you can see in the photo at the top, I took that photo, that was in Azerbaijan. That was of the Crystal Hall. So that was one of the venues that I was lucky enough to work at. And the photo underneath, that was me working at Edgbaston Cricket Ground in Birmingham. I'm not sure if any cricket fans here, but again, I know nothing about cricket, but I got the opportunity to work at that event because I was willing to put myself out there, willing to work it with my comfort zone, and most of all, I was willing to learn. So that's one of the key things there. But this slide really is just to show you that sometimes you might well need to relocate. You might need to travel for the work, because sometimes the work's not always going to be here. You might need to go out and get it. So this slide here is personally some of the skills that I believe are key for securing employment in sport or any industry. So communication. So right now I'm delivering a presentation to almost 100 people. I'm comfortable with that because I've done it many times. So whether you go to college, university, in a job, any environment, you might need to deliver presentations, you might need to deliver training to volunteers or new starts in your work. You need to have good communication skills. You need to be able to adapt your communication, whether that's training or working abroad for a short period of time. You need to have strong communication skills there. Teamwork. So again, that's something that for a lot of people can come naturally, because when you were in primary school and secondary school, naturally you'll be put into situations where you work as part of a team. But one of the key messages here about teamwork is that it's not all about me and it's not all about you. It's about everyone's opinions within the team. And that's one of the key things, especially working in sport. It's not only about what I think's best. If I'm coaching a gymnast or if I'm coaching a footballer, it's about putting their interests first and having that communication with them. So it's all relevant skills. Quick decision making is one that I think is important as well, especially within sport, because in sport anything can happen. If you're a football manager, you put out your first 11 on the pitch, 10 seconds into the game, one of your players is injured. Quick decision. You need to make a quick decision, change someone, who you're bringing on, does it meet the formation of the team? Example. So it shows relevant examples of that. Working under pressure, so that's the same thing, but mostly relevant to sport again, because it could be live on TV. Like, you need to be able to work under pressure, meet these tight deadlines, and use your initiative. Do you have a plan B? do we need a plan B? If plan A isn't working, like some of the football games we've watched lately, maybe in the Euros or any other sport or cycling or whatever it may be, if plan A is not working, how long does it take for you to then jump into plan B? So things to think about there. You need, responsibility. So if you go to college or university, or if you have a job, if you're given a task, you need to take responsibility for that and take ownership of it and go from there. And the thing about that is that employers love to see that you can take responsibility for a task. It could be a tiny, small task, but see if you take responsibility for it and own it, they'll love that. They'll absolutely love that. And then they'll give you more responsibility as the weeks go by. And then before you know it, you could have all the skills and relevant experience to take on a management position. So it could be any task, but take pride in it and take it seriously. Motivation, so you could be managing volunteers if you're working in sport. Volunteers are doing it voluntarily, funnily enough, so they're doing it for free. So you need to engage with them, good communication, keep your motivation high, smile, tell them they're doing a good job. You need to have good motivation yourself in order to pass it off onto other people to keep them engaged. And then again, it could be long shifts. So especially if you're working in sport, it could be long shifts. So you need to be willing to be committed, determined, and have good motivation. And like I've touched on before, flexible. There's a variety of roles out there. There's a variety of sports. Don't limit yourself to just one. Try and open your eyes and do as much as you can. And then my last point there is identity. So like I said, at first you might start in a job that you're not completely passionate about, but if you know your identity, you know what you want to do, it will lead you there one day. It might take 5 years, it might take 1 week, it's different for every person. There's no point comparing yourself to anyone else, especially around your age or your friends or whatever it may be. Don't compare yourself to someone else, because it might just mean that it takes you a wee bit longer, but in the long run, it will be so much more worth it. So try not to compare yourself to other people. I know so many people my age at university that have gone on to do amazing things, and you look at them sometimes and you can't help but compare, but it's meaningless. It's pointless. There's no point trying to compare yourself to other people, because everyone has different circumstances. Okay, these 2 slides I'll go through quite quickly. There's not too much information here, but these are just, there's a photo of me working at Tough Mudder recently, and that's a photo of me at the bottom working at the Special Olympics. But these are just examples of some of the training I have done to enhance my career in sport. So if you wanted to take a note of some of them or take a picture, feel free. That's just some good, relevant, general examples of training which has helped me in securing employment as a sports coach, as an active schools coordinator, as a volunteer manager, things like that. And it shows as well I've worked at, I've delivered training, and I've undertaken training from UK athletics, soft archery. I've done a variety of different sports, again, just to enhance my knowledge. And it means that when I go to an interview, I can say, oh, well, actually, I've undertaken some training at this and this. So that's just a good example of that. And then we'll touch one more slide on the training. So again, this is just a few other training sessions that I've done. I've undertaken golf and cycling training, and again, that's just to underpin my knowledge, give me a little bit of understanding, and then I can take it into a job, because sometimes you might need a qualification for a particular job. If you want to be an athletics coach, you might need a UKCC level 1. Same with netball, same with football, same with cycling, any other event. You might need a qualification before you can apply to the job. So that's just to make you aware of some of that. And then one of my last slides, guys, is things to consider. So this is potentially some of the challenges of working in sport. Hopefully this doesn't put you off, and all of the other things I've mentioned and all of the rewards and all of the opportunities are going to come out on top. But this is just things that maybe you need to think about as well if you're looking to obtain a career in sport. It's incredibly competitive. So when you go to university or college, or you get a job or whatever it may be, there are hundreds of people, all roughly the same age, all looking to obtain a career in this similar sort of industry. So you need to think, how can I stand out? And for me, how I stood out was volunteering, putting myself out there, undertaking training, applying for loads of jobs. Like, I have hundreds of rejections, but I'm willing to keep putting myself out there because eventually I know that I will get one. And once I get one, the next one will be easier, and then the next one will be easier and easier, and it will go on from there. So just sometimes you need to take rejection and move on. And that's fine. We get rejected from a job, no problem. Go for the next one. And then you could get rejected from plenty of jobs, but it's eventually you'll get that one. It might not be something you're hugely passionate about, but it'll give you those skills that you can then apply for other jobs with, and it's completely transferable. Some of the things you might be again willing to have to work temporary contracts or temporary periods of employment at the start, and then eventually you can secure that permanent role. But you need to show sometimes that you have the experience, and to get that experience, you might need to take a temporary role. With regards to traveling, like I said, there's an element of travel involved sometimes with sport. If you want to work at your local gymnastics or football club, that's no problem. You could maybe walk or cycle there. But then what if eventually you get lots of experience and you get offered a job elsewhere? The football club or the gymnastics club or whatever it may be might be a wee bit further away, so you might be willing to do that there. Some of the jobs in sport might require manual labour or physical activity, so you might need to be physically active yourself. If you want to pursue a career in PE teaching, you're going to need to be physically active, and you're going to need to have an understanding of gymnastics, football, all the different sports, and be relatively competent at each of these skills. So put yourself out there, volunteer, participate in some physical activity. And like I said, it might be a long shift sometime, but that's only temporary. So if you're willing to put yourself out there and do a few long shifts, what it shows is that you can add to your CV that you're determined, you're hardworking, and you're willing to work for the money, work for the volunteering opportunity, or work for the knowledge. And then there's an element as well of who you know. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that before. But with a lot of jobs, sometimes they might give it to a candidate who they already know and they've worked with previously. So that's why I'm trying to say, if you do some volunteering, you might finally meet someone that'll help you later down the line. It might be a case of, oh, I've worked with them before, they're great, and then they might employ you. So sometimes it is a case of putting yourself out there and volunteering and getting an opportunity, networking and meeting people, because you never know who you're going to meet. They might be able to help you later down the line. Relationships, again, I've touched on that. You can make some amazing friends, and you can share all these memories with your family as well and stuff. So it's just that's just a good thing there. That's not necessarily a challenge. That's just something that you can make new friends. And if you're not sure about what you want to do, and if you're unsure about sport, why not volunteer and give it a shot anyway? You might make a friend out of it. You might do whatever. So sometimes it's just about the social element as well, getting out of the house, go and do something. And I've touched it on already with regards to patience and resilience. You just need to keep going. See if you get a couple of rejections, that's fine. Just take it on the chin, keep going. It's honestly not a big deal. I've been rejected from hundreds of jobs, hundreds of colleges, universities, and yet I've done okay for myself, So it's just about putting yourself out there, being willing to take a little bit of rejection and cope with that failure, and know that maybe that just wasn't the right opportunity for me. I'll get the next one. And then the last thing as well, it might look great on Instagram, but it might be a wee bit different. So see, when you're comparing to your friends and you think, oh, on Instagram, they're doing this, they're doing that, it might not actually be as good as it looks, So just try not to compare too much with other people, because you only really need to worry about how you're getting on and enhancing your own career. So that's realistically me touched on most of the things that I was hoping to touch on today. And my last slide is just to summarize all that. So I have focused on working in sport and working in events. Some of the skills that I believe are key for securing employment in this industry. Some examples of relevant training. It might not be suitable for you guys, but that's just an example that sometimes you do need some knowledge before you can apply for a role, and then just some of the challenges. So if you have any questions, feel free to either ask me openly. You can unmute yourself and raise your hand, and I'll come to you, or you can write some messages in the chat, whatever suits you. So if you have any questions, please just let me know.
I know there'll probably be quite a few people in the group that have considered a career in sport or are considering a career in sport. So now's a great opportunity, guys, if you do have any questions about that, to ask away. Alternatively, Craig, you'll possibly find that you might get a few LinkedIn requests because the group have learned all about LinkedIn over the last few weeks. So I know that they're connected and building networks online.
Yeah, no worries, and that's what it's all about, networking and connecting with people. And you never know, I'll post job opportunities regularly as well on LinkedIn. So if you want, guys, feel free to add me on LinkedIn.
What was your favorite place to work? Your favorite event?
Cool. Cheers, Joseph. The place I loved working the most, believe it or not, was in Dubai. So I was just literally sitting in this room, and I got a phone call one day from a random number, and it says, "Hi, is this Craig McIntyre?" I was like, yeah, how's it going? And turns out it was one of the recruiters for the Special Olympics, and I had previously worked with that company at other events. So I got the chance to fly out to Dubai. I had my hotel covered, my flights covered, and then I got the chance to work in like 30 degrees heat every day working at a major event. So it was like a dream come true. But the only thing is, that was a temporary period of employment. So that's what I was talking about. And it was an amazing month and it looked great on Instagram. But then what, So after that, I had to think about, I need to apply for another job and things. So that was by far the best thing I've worked at. I met a lot of like celebrities and things like that as well. So yeah, that was brilliant. Hopefully that answers that. Question from Hannah: does sport development help join the police? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if you know already, but you need to do a physical and a practical element when you're joining the police. And it's the same as if you want to join the fire service as well. My dad's a fireman and he's a really sporty guy, and that helped him pass the test and get into the fire service, and that's very similar to the police. They will love someone sporty because it shows that you've got the physical elements of taking on the role, and also if you're interested in sports development, it shows that you've got organisational skills, planning, team working, and also, especially in sports development, it's quite relevant to the police because if you're working with challenging children or young adults and have behavioural challenges, being able to deal with that and being exposed to that environment definitely helps when applying to the police. So you can draw on some examples there.
Any other questions from anyone before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Craig. That's been really helpful, and hopefully a few of you have sort of thought about how sport can help you with your career, whether it is in a career in sport or whether it's something totally different. I believe this group, you're off to food and drink as the next industry insights at 10:30, I think. So hopefully you enjoy that. But thank you again, Craig. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to the next session in 15 minutes or so.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.